Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda citiesabc Open Business Council series, and now with another interview with someone that comes from Belgium in this time, and someone that has been working on technology for a long time and doing quite amazing things in multiple different areas. So I welcome to our series Bart Smets, that is the Managing Director of IT2Profit, which is an organization that has been working since 2020 in the idea of creating solutions on technology and blockchain, and as well creating a lot of quite interesting ways of looking, especially, and I'll read the quote, as a result of coronavirus measures, the office is not accessible if you have an appointment, and while respecting social distance rules. And with the ICT services, there's a lot of opportunities that can actually be taken within this time. So Bart has been working in this, in creating this company that is mostly providing blockchain and DLT services. He worked previously with Coca-Cola Group, and he had a very big position on that area. And in this company right now, they look from audits to work in CIO, so Chief Information Office work, which is particularly important going forward with all these data things, and audits that can actually look at security and compliance, and looking at ways to looking at how companies can actually strengthen their relationships and moving in different directions. The profile of Bart is quite impressive in the sense that he's been working with both major organizations, different as well areas of expertise in the bridge between technology and in the bridge of corporations. And he's been as well working in a lot of especially ways of how we can actually use this emergent technology, and as well crypto and blockchain and cybersecurity, to improve services, to improve solutions. And I like a lot that from his background, so probably, of course, he had a big position in Coca-Cola, but since then he's been always in the IT and ICT world, and looking at complex material, dealing with complex setups of companies and corporations, and as well how to look at mandates in terms of board of direction and advisory councils, and how to look at how to put this in practice, especially now that is more important than ever. He's been as well a guest teacher at the universities of Antwerp and Brussels, and has been working for some time. He has a lot of experience as well in the industry. So welcome to our series, Bart. I'm looking forward to talk about these topics and go through some of your areas of expertise.
Thank you, Dinis. Very glad to be here.
So I want to start. So Bart, you have a very senior, long career that actually touch all the different areas of technology. So I would like to firstly start with a bit of your background and career, but as well in that, if you could actually just put some timelines, because I think for everyone right now, it's obvious that technology is key, but let's say just 10 years ago, technology was not still key. And as well, I'm sure that you went through all the different mutations and revolutions within technology, which are still going on, let's put it that way, but now are being accelerated.
Well, I seem to be working in cycles of 7 years. And I'm a bit of a typical engineer. So I have an engineering background, which makes me analytical in everything I do. Yet I don't seem to be that technical, because I'm always looking at business solutions and driving things forward. If I look at a red line throughout my entire career, then it's always been about driving change, about making things happen, about driving companies forward, and exploring constantly new areas that can help do that. Because as soon as something becomes recurring operational stability and it just requires somebody to babysit it, then that's usually where I move on. So I happen to be moving in cycles of 7 years, apparently. Coca-Cola company, 7 years, company before that, 7 years, company before that, 7 years. So that seems to be kind of a thread throughout my life until now, with the exception of my current company, which I created in 2006, after I left the Coca-Cola company as a result of a major restructuring at the end of 2005. So I took some time out at that moment reflecting about what is it I want to do. And I looked at my position as a chief technology officer in the Coca-Cola company, and I gave ourselves a pretty good maturity score of about 7 on a scale of 0 to 10, right? And then I ended up in the other world outside there, and I found that a lot of companies were really terrible. It was a disaster. So he said, okay, why don't we then apply that knowledge and that experience to help these other companies drive forward instead of putting all my energy in one company? And that's where IT2Profit was born as a consultancy organization to help companies define their IT strategies, audit the environments, set up the right security roadmaps, the right strategies. But I've also experienced being on the other side of the table. So I said, we don't want to be theoretical consultants. So we want to be able to also implement what we advise. And that's what made the difference with the second motto, where we said, we're driving change through our experience and knowledge, not from a theoretical perspective. And that is what makes it applicable in companies and what makes it applicable in organizations. Okay. So that was a big differentiator versus the other consulting organizations we found in the market. The second area is that we said at every assignment we do for a customer, we strive to make ourselves obsolete. And that was pretty strange at that moment. And why did we do that? Because, well, I've been on the other side of the table, and you know how it goes with consultants. They make themselves tied into the organization so that it becomes really hard to get rid of them. And as a management, what do you then do? You try to start finding ways to get rid of them. And it makes life hard. So at every assignment we did, we've always said, we are here to establish a certain result, to stabilize, and then to hand over to people in the retained organization so that we can go away again and go to the next challenge. So that is obviously what kept our motivation and what kept our drive going forward. So in those assignments, I've been in different CIO assignments of organizations, every time, a number of years, restructuring an organization and making sure that IT and the technicality of things became a business driver for those companies and organizations. And that's really what made the difference. So I was always looking at what does the government kept us going forward. Now, at the beginning of 2013, ran into some very interesting people with very interesting conversations around blockchain technology. And it is something that stuck to my mind ever since. And I remember very well, in 2012, beginning 2013, looking into these public ledger blockchains, etc. And I was going like, but this is existing technology. It exists for quite a while. It is just becoming known at this point. So what makes it different now? Well, the difference is obviously the birth of Bitcoin in the cryptocurrency world, but the technology itself is actually a very strong distributed database ledger technology, which is used for business applications. So the segmentation of the use in the market is not restricted to cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies just happens to be one area of applicability to it. And the rest, there are a lot of business applications driven on blockchain solutions as well. Now, the difference between this area where you have these public distributed ledger technologies and the public blockchains is that everything is transparent. So if you have the right information, the right knowledge, the right experience, actually you can do quite some data mining and discover quite some interesting stuff around there. A lot of companies obviously don't want their internal kitchen to be exposed to the outside world. So how do you handle the applicability of blockchain technology in the industry where you have an ecosystem of companies that need to collaborate in a certain environment, but where it doesn't necessarily need to be open to the larger public? So those are all dilemmas which are actually very interesting in that entire technology area. So if I look at, since the beginning of 2017, approximately, we started focusing on helping people get acquainted with that world, get acquainted with the blockchain world, get acquainted with cryptocurrencies, help them in doing their portfolio management of their different tokens, because there's a whole bunch of projects out there which are actually good projects that have launched a token as a mechanism of funding in the typical ICO hype type world, right? A lot of those have not survived, unfortunately. A lot of people put seed capital in, lost their money. Some were successful and doing pretty good. So the big differentiation that I see currently is where people look at this entire blockchain world as something spooky and scary, while actually it is not that difficult, okay? It just happens to be a distributed database, which is publicly accessible, which can be inquired, which can be investigated. And that's the bottom line of it. So if I look at cryptocurrencies on one side, there is, for me, you have Bitcoin as the father of the cryptocurrency world, right? You have Ethereum, which I call the mother of the cryptocurrencies. But Ethereum is actually a lot more than just a cryptocurrency. It is an application platform. If you look at how many tokens actually make use of the Ethereum backbone, that is massive. The market dominance in that area in terms of application usage of a blockchain is absolutely significant. So it is a lot wider than just the world of cryptocurrencies. And that's really the message that I want to get past.
Amazing, and I think it's a fantastic career. So before we go, I have a couple of questions because you made a very broader overview. So I want to start first. Let's go back to Coca-Cola because I think it's quite interesting. Yeah. And you mentioned 2005, which was 15 years ago. So at that time, the internet was starting to mature. Things were starting to go, or actually to start. Let's put it that way, because internet is still a teenager. So I would like to just from people, because I think history, sometimes you forget history, and history is very important to understand. Like you mentioned, even most of the principles of blockchain are about crypto, or all the areas of centralized ecosystems, and I'm missing the word, but about the way we look at security systems and the different systems. So I would like to start with your experience in technology, leading one of the biggest companies in the world. It's not a tech company, but at the moment, every company is a tech company. So can you tell us a bit about this and as well your 7-year cycles? I think it's particularly interesting because if you look at this, it's as well the cycles as well of technology, more or less, because let's say you had the first 7 years of internet, there was mostly just Google taking over. Then we had Facebook with social media. And then we came to the internet of trust, that is blockchain, and now we go into AI, or the two things in parallel. But I would like to hear from that experience of dealing with one of the major companies, and as well advising big corporations, but as well on the startup world. And then I want to touch, of course, blockchain in the next questions.
Okay. Well, the Coca-Cola company was actually an incredible experience. Okay. It is a company that you breathe when you work there. I had the advantage of having extremely good coaches and mentors in that organization. And I've not been leading that company. Let's be clear on that. Okay. I just happened to be in charge of the technology landscape across a region of 64 countries, which we called Greater Europe at that time, which was all countries between Greenland and Japan. Okay. That was a very interesting life, even though technology was already very strongly represented in that organization. We still had to travel a lot, okay? Because I lived a big part of those 7 years out of a suitcase, leaving every Monday morning, going to the different countries where I had people based, and then Friday evening or Saturday coming back home again. So it was very interesting to work in an organization of that size, because of the intercultural and international aspects. If I look at my team at those days, I had like 23 different nationalities in my team. And just the intercultural aspect of that and how you get things done in working with remote teams, virtual teams, different cultures and different nationalities to make a goal happen, that's actually where the challenge was. The challenge was not as much in the technology, the challenge was in the people, okay? So from that experience, it was very good because I learned a lot from that experience, a lot more than ever at university. So A good company to work for, to me, is a lot richer to build experience, to build capabilities, to build skills than whichever official education program that you can do. Because, and maybe it's my nature, I've learned it on the job, okay? And that's just my learning style, so that's okay for me. I can imagine that there are other people that have a different learning style and that want to go through classroom type teaching and that want to go through e-courses and things like that. And that's all okay. You need to have the baggage to be able to do something successfully. But for me, the most important thing was, and I remember my interview at Coca-Cola when there was a headhunter that had approached me from my previous company, and where I said, look, you guys want me to come on board here and establish something, and that's fine, I can do that. I have the baggage for that. That's the reason why you sent the headhunter after me. But what's next? What's after that? And for me personally, it was that journey which was a lot more interesting, and the capabilities that that organization offered, instead of being hired to do the same job for the rest of your life. There are people that need change, there are people that need evolution, and there are also people that are perfectly happy with doing the same for a very long period, and that's fine as well. But you need both type of horses in a stable, okay? I'm just not the type of horse that does the same thing over and over and over again. So that's basically where I'm different. Now, what I liked about that period is the liberty to take control of your own destiny. And that's what made it a very nice experience to me. So when I left the Coca-Cola company, it was a different world out there. Because suddenly I found myself in a world of other companies, and I'd been living and breathing that company for 7 years, right? And then suddenly I ended up with other companies in conversations with other counterparties, CTOs and CIOs of other organizations, etc. And I was looking at them and I was going, really? Okay. And that's actually where the idea to start up IT2Profit was born. So that's where it all came from having that practical example and really with the feet in the mud, getting things done, but also having and getting the means to make it happen and being rewarded for those results. That was the drive for me to start the track after that.
Amazing. And I think that's a very important thing because like you mentioned, I think that everyone is learning every day because technology is evolving so fast. And as well, we need as well people that have a legacy system knowledge. And I think that's why I think your knowledge is so precious for any organization, because let's say a new developer or a new technology expert that doesn't have that historical level can incur in massive damages and in massive errors that can actually cost dear for any organization, especially if it's a big corporation, because in the end of the day, we have a world that has multiple legacy systems working with each other. So I want to touch your first engagement and the way you get into crypto and blockchain, because it's two different things. So blockchain is much more, like you said, encryption technologies, all these areas of centralized versus decentralized, open source, and then creating modes and nodes to make sure that you have a bit of cloud computing systems, but just more decentralized. And whereas crypto just made blockchain mainstream through the area of the smart contracts. So I would like to hear how did you came into this? How did you build as well from a very IT corporate background to get into crypto, to get into tokens, but as well to get into blockchain consultancy more from an engineering perspective? It's two different things we always have to separate.
Well, we have to separate the engineering part and what I call the technical guru part of it versus the business applicability of it, okay? And to me, those are two totally different things. I remember every time when I entered into an organization, one of my first questions was always, when there was this really nice technology-driven project, my first question was always, why are we doing this project? And then the second question was, no, let me rephrase, why are we doing this? And then my third question was, so what's the business case behind it? What's the business use behind it? And who the heck is the business sponsor? Because if there is no business sponsor, to me, there is no technology project, full stop, okay? I see plenty of people coming up with great technology ideas and great technology innovations, and they forget to sell the solution. So making the bridge from the technology to the solution And a solution needs to do one of the following two things for me, okay? It needs to either help realize a new target where that technology and that solution makes a difference in achieving that business targets, or it needs to fix a painful problem in an organization. So if it does not solve a pain, or it does not help me realize new targets, then there's no use for the technology at all, full stop. And that's where I love to work with young lions that are fantastic in all these technology areas, a lot better than me, okay? But I always make the business reflex. And that is what to me makes the difference. I see a lot of great ideas from a technology perspective, where if I'm looking at it and I'm doing a fundamental analysis on the project, I'm going like, nah, this is not going to survive. Why? Because there's no use for it in the world. Or the world is maybe not ready for it yet, okay? So that is a big message that I think is very important. In whatever people do, if there is no goal that you can achieve with that otherwise would be impossible or very difficult, or it does not fundamentally solve a pain in a very efficient and agile way, then why would you look at it? One of the things that I see vastly different today versus 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago is the speed at which we get things done. I remember very well, if I look back at projects 10, 15 years ago versus the same projects now, we're now doing them in a fraction of the time, a lot more efficient. And not only because of the technology, but also because of the way to structure the teams and the organizations around it, okay? One thing that I also notice is that once people launch an idea in the blockchain world, it becomes carved in stone and it becomes static, okay? And that is what I'm missing sometimes in many of these projects. That is the agility to be flexible, to be scaling, the agility to make it evolve, to make the solution evolve. It can perfectly be that somebody came up with the idea to create an egg, but actually I want to eat a chicken fillet. So how do we get from that egg to the chicken fillet on my plates, okay? And that's the reflex that people need to do when they launch a technology project. I've seen many projects die because the founders of the project didn't make the project evolve and didn't look at the changing world around it. If I go back 1 year versus now, I mean, even that recent, just a bit more than a year ago, I think the majority of the people were working physically in offices. Everybody was in traffic jams and getting to the office. And when people were at the office, they were opening their computer and starting to work on their computer. Well, if you look now, since the COVID-19 situation, how much of the world population is effectively working from home more than 80% of the time? I think you'd be amazed. But the technology also needed to evolve rapidly to be able to facilitate and enable that. Now, what I'm missing at this moment, and maybe it's out there and I just haven't seen it yet and it hasn't reached me yet, is how is blockchain technology tapping into that changing world to create that new ecosystem of our workforce across the globe. The world has become a village, we all know that, right? And the big advantage of the blockchain technology is exactly that it is globally accessible. So we are not bound to the physical printers of a company. That's what makes blockchain so interesting. But I see blockchain technology missing the opportunity to tap into that changing world environment that we have now with the economics that change. So I'm really eager to find the first companies that come up with a fantastic solution to create an impact in this area using the technology for a purpose.
Yeah, I subscribe 100% with what you said, and I think I would say that the complexity of technology is just going to augment going forward, because of course, like you mentioned, there's so much waves and contra waves, and as well the complexity is from different levels, because it's business, it's technology, it's dealing with technology and business, dealing with communities, dealing with clients, and as well dealing with increasing cybersecurity. So I want to go back to how did you start? Because you have been working quite substantial with tokens, with OTC, and big complex transactions between fiat to crypto and crypto to fiat, and as well with blockchain setups. Can you tell us a bit about that? How did you start? And I'm particularly excited to hear from you because you are a conventional IT expert that has been on this for decades, been working with big corporations, and then you went to cutting edge. Let's say just if you would be talking 5 years ago, and we'd be talking about crypto, probably if a bank would be listening to us, they didn't want to know that they were listening to us. And most of the big corporations, yeah, even 2 years ago, probably, yeah. So
we would have been having this same conversation 5 years ago, I would probably have declared myself crazy at that time. Okay.
yes, exactly.
So I mean, it does go incredibly fast. You're absolutely right in that. Okay. Now, I first got in touch with blockchain technology as a potential technology solution to look at to solve a technical problem that we had with some old AS400 systems, the old IBM world. And we had some massive application problems and issues there. And we were looking at evolving to a new technology. Okay. So are we going to go to different environments, to thin clients, to fat clients, to Windows systems, to Unix, Linux systems, etc. So that entire technology change, that is where one of my younger people that I work with came up with the idea like, hey, why don't we look at this blockchain thing? And I'm going like, block what? A chain is to carry around your neck, isn't it? So that was really like the first time to me I heard about it, instilled by a guy that was 20 years younger than me, who had been playing around with it. So we looked at it and at that time said, damn, there's a lot of possibilities in this technology, but it's not yet at the level where we needed to solve this particular business problem. So let's keep an eye on it. And just kept track of it. And about a year and a half later, I remember very well in 2009 when Bitcoin was launched with that white paper from our famous anonymous guy, right? It was using that exact same technology. There it is again. So just kept following it. And then in 2013, decided to get a few Bitcoins at $23 a piece. I still think that was a good choice to make at that time. Okay.
If you kept if you kept it since then, it's not bad to say less.
The problem is I didn't keep them. I sold them.
Yeah, I know. Most of people, yeah.
Yeah. So, but did I buy them because I believed in the potential success? No. Just because of something that was driving as the first business use I saw on a technology that existed already a long time before. Okay, because that technology is already out there for God knows how long. Okay, and what triggered me in that entire cryptocurrency space using blockchain technology is because that is the first time that I saw a business case or a potential business use of something that wanted to be global without central control. Because look at it honestly, what is the typical nature of cryptocurrencies? There is no central authority that controls them, that governs them, that legislates them. It is global, independent from all economies, independent from inflation, and it almost represents at this moment a global store of value. If you look at Bitcoin on one side and a global application usability landscape, if you look at Ethereum and several others behind that. So this is the first time when I really see technology platforms or the technology foundation that's there being used to create something that is independent from a country, independent from a government, independent from financial institutions, and that can operate independently. I mean, as long as there will be 3 computers or more in the world doing the mining on those blockchains, they will continue to exist. So the only way to stop this movement is to cut the power and internet connectivity all over the world at the same time. And even then, it's going to be unstoppable. So for me, this is the egg that's born. Going back to the chicken on my plate, this is the egg that's born. Okay? And if I look at the new traction that I'm seeing around these non-fungible tokens, the NFTs, artists putting their digital art for sale on those platforms, I'm going like, wow, finally, people can actually put things out there. People can buy it globally. without being limited to the financial transfer capabilities to be able to pay for something, and without being limited to have the certificates of authenticity, because that's really what those NFTs are about. It gives you an original certificate that what you're buying is the authentic piece. Okay, so all the fraud situations disappear. So I see that world evolving, absolutely. Going back to another part of your question around OTC deals and larger transactions and institutional grade money, a lot of that has been happening already behind the scenes. Okay, a lot of parties have been buying and selling in larger quantities. If you look at the top transactions on blockchain level, you regularly see transactions 1,000 Bitcoins and more. Now, let's be honest, 1,000 Bitcoins and more, that is not some individual that happens to own a few Bitcoins, right? And there are two ways of getting that stuff done. Way number one is what I call the old world, which is the old traditional OTC type way of working. I want to buy a bunch of coins. I claim to have a lot of money, and somebody else claims to have a lot of coins and no money, because that's the reason why they're selling, right? Okay, I don't buy that story. I don't believe it, because you typically end up with a world of intermediaries misrepresenting, claiming they have a buyer, claiming they have a seller, and they always discuss about fees instead of making the deal happen. So if I go back to my view, instead of discussing to make the deal happen and to be able to facilitate a transaction, they're actually discussing about how much can I make on this while the sale isn't even there. Then you have the dilemma of the escrow companies with a lot of escrows not even existing or being fraudulent, money disappearing. I mean, it's full of cases like that all over the world, okay? Even people claiming to be an escrow company, then making money get lost and ending up in jail, rightly so. So the other alternative, which larger institutions have been using and family offices and private banks have been using, I mean, banks are in this world, don't be fooled, okay? If there's one thing that the banking or the financial institutions are not going to let go, then it is their control about the financial flow of money, okay? And if there's one thing that the governments are not going to let go, it is taxes, okay? So the advantage of those OTC deals is it has to go right, it has to go legally correct. And then the dilemma comes, what is the source of the coins? Are the coins from legitimate origin? Now, on the blockchain, you can do forensics on that, you can do proper investigations on that, toolings exist to do that. It is not that hard if you know that world. And then on the money side, well, obviously that's a lot clearer because money comes through banks, right? So there, the source of funds is a lot clearer to establish. But then the dilemma comes back. So which moves first? Do the coins move first? Does the money move first? Do we use a custodian? Can we trust the custodian? What if a party doesn't perform? What are the implications for the other party? So it is a complex structure to make happen. We've built a team about 3 years ago to help the market do OTC deals. And we ended up with a blacklist of well over 1,000 people who claimed to have a buyer or a seller. And when we did our due diligence, there was nothing there, okay? So that market is screwed up, totally. So the other way we're currently doing it is having institutions, having larger parties that want to buy or sell, open accounts on institutional exchanges, have them open institutional grade accounts where they can do large transactions, large volumes, and then do it in an intelligent way. Because if we look at the technical analysis of the charts, then the volatility is pretty strong. There are significant fluctuations up and down. So if I know that there is a fluctuation up and down of easily 10, 15% per week or even more, do I care as a buyer to get 2% discount on my purchase? Or do I want to time my purchase right? I think the second one is a lot more important. So if there's a buyer that wants to buy 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 15,000 coins, I don't care about the quantity. We make it happen by doing it the right way, secure for the buyer, and through APIs interfacing to our systems, where we do the technical analysis and we place the orders in an intelligent way in the open markets. So why would we want to keep that volume away from the market? There's no need for that. It is a lot more important, again, to trigger the purchase or the sale at the right time. A seller wants to sell at a premium price. A buyer wants to buy at a discount. There's your first dilemma. We don't even care about that anymore in the new world today. The only thing we care about is what is the needs of the buyer, what is the needs of the seller, and let's make it happen, because that's what it's about. And then after it's done, I will gladly send my invoice, but not before. Okay, so this OTC world is crooked. It's screwed up big time. A lot of people have attempted to start up certain activities in that space. We stopped doing it in the traditional way. The only way we do it for family offices, larger institutions, private banks, etc., is the way I just described, by doing it secure, safe, and at the right timing. Because a week and a half ago, we bought a bunch of coins for a certain party at $43,000 a piece. Do you think today at 54,000, those people are happy? Well, I can bet you they are. Okay? Did they have to go through the complexity of all the contracting and lawyers and escrows and validating if a seller is real and the origin of the coins, etc.? No. It takes us 24 hours to get somebody up and running and to start transacting. Not more than that. But by doing it in an innovative way, making use of the market and the systems that exist, making use of the technology that exists, just giving it a different business purpose. And that brings it back to our way of thinking. I've once had a discussion with the CEO of a company who says, we have a problem because the word impossible does not exist in your vocabulary. And I said, well, that means it's your problem, not mine. Because the word impossible does not exist. Everything is possible, as long as you look at it from a different angle. That's what we're all about. Yeah, so the OTC world, I mean, for people that are looking to buy or sell large quantities, we can do it quick, efficient, safe, without all that hassle. And it's just a new way of handling it. I mean, you're not going to tell me, Dinis, that if you have, let's say, 5,000 Bitcoins, your reaction would probably be, ooh, I wish so, right? You're not going to tell me that you are then not going to explore and invest in somebody doing the charting for you, doing the technical analysis for you, determining when is the right time for you to sell. Are you then going to go push the button when you want to sell at the right time, at the right price for you? Or are you then going to go through a process with a whole load of intermediaries scouting the markets to find a buyer for you, and then having the risk that you send your coins and your money never arrives? You just don't want that anymore. Okay? So that's, for me, the evolution that I see in the OTC world. Of all the time that we've been analyzing deals, we've been doing that with 3-4 people for a very long period, intensive, long phone calls in the middle of the night, just name it. And after a while, we said, like, okay, this isn't happening. So what's the problem? Because we hear people that want to buy, we hear people that want to sell, they just don't seem to be finding each other the right way. So what exists from a technology perspective that we can use to enable that and to facilitate those things? Well, people don't want to give us the access codes to their account because that puts their security at risk. So how can we do that creative? How can we trigger the orders 24/7 the right way, at the right price, with the right quantities, without that person having to worry about, even while you are in your bed sleeping? How can we make that happen? So that's where we designed the mechanisms to do that. So we interface, we work through our systems. The only thing we can do is trigger commands. That's it. Okay. So that is, for me, the new way of the OTC world. The OTC world, the old way as it existed until about a year and a half ago, is going to disappear. Because all the intermediaries chasing deals are getting disappointed and tired because they never make a deal happen, so they never make any money because they earn a commission. It's that simple.
No, and it's a very important thing what you mentioned. So I have a couple of questions here just related with this. So because as the industry gets more mature, there's more complexities coming here. So my question is, especially as major banks, for instance, Goldman Sachs is right now a crypto desk, JP Morgan, even they were one of the biggest critics of Bitcoin right now, are using all crypto. And as well, Bitcoin and crypto, it passed $1.2 trillion yesterday. Actually, as we speak, we are in the beginning of March. Bitcoin got the biggest price ever during this month, and it keeps going up. And there's a lot of people discussing that Bitcoin is becoming like the global decentralized reserve money. And I think this is becoming mainstream right now, because even the major banks are all coming from Tesla to PayPal are all right now putting reserves on crypto. So how do you see this part, especially from your work that you were probably cutting edge in what you do, these OTC deals, right now for major banks looking at this, but that's still a bridge that there's the big Bitcoin traders. There was a study recently from pure data around Bitcoin and crypto that around 3,000 to 4,000 wallets control probably 60 to 70% of the world transactions on Bitcoin. And of course, right now with the institutional clients, this is going to take this for a completely different level. And as well, Coinbase is going to be the first crypto IPO, let's put it that way, because it's going to be public with a valuation of over $100 billion. So I want to hear your thoughts, especially as someone that's been in the industry from a technology perspective, but as well from a financial and from a risk management perspective.
There are indeed those three axes: technology, financial, and risk management. Okay. Do I see financial institutions buying crypto? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's happening full speed. I mean, we have a few clients, not private banks, not in Belgium, but outside of Belgium, who are regularly doing transactions and filling the bags, as we say. Okay. We also see some other people and also those same institutions taking profits and selling. So I think there's a duality here. Okay. From a technology perspective, I mean, the only way you're going to be able to stop this is to destroy the planet, basically. Okay. So the technology is going to survive. The technology is at the second generation. It needs to mature. Okay. So is the current technology being for day-to-day transactions in larger volumes for small amounts? No, it isn't. Okay. It isn't. I don't see people paying €3 sandwich with Bitcoin. I don't see that happening. Not today. In the future, maybe. But there are also other mechanisms today in the financial world to be able to do that. Now, every transaction costs money. People say, oh, I pay with my Maestro card and it doesn't cost me any money. No, but it costs money to the merchants. Okay? So the driving force of usability will be, when does it become a commodity? And that day will be massive from a change perspective. Do I see Bitcoin being used for that? Well, no. I'm not going to be waiting 20 minutes at the cashier of a supermarket until my transaction is confirmed before being able to leave. The merchant is not going to be happy with that either. So other mechanisms will be coming up for that. The big advantage, though, is that everything that is internet driven, absolutely, because there that time for checkout doesn't really weigh on my capability to perform as a merchant. So if I have a web shop, is it okay to be able to accept that as a payment mechanism? Well, of course, I can process as many in parallel as I want with the right mechanism in place. Okay, so the technology usability depends on the business domain. Okay, if the business domain is internet driven as part of the global world as it is today, where we know that the logistics systems behind have really become mature. Look at the Alibabas and the Amazons of this world. Look at how fast they ship and deliver to your home when you deliver something. Okay, it's incredible. That world has evolved incredibly. And that is a driver, which is the fulfillment after the initial transaction. So that fulfillment capability is now just getting up to speed in the world, especially also aided with COVID and so many people doing their shopping over the internet. All those logistics companies had to gear up, and they did. So that is a prerequisite for the technology usability behind it. Okay. Then you have the speed of the financial transactions. The speed of the financial transactions, if we are looking at this in the virtual world or in the electronic world, absolutely. If we are looking at this in the physical retail world, I think it still has some maturing to do before we'll get there. But it is evolving fast. Okay. Then if I look at the financial world, one of the reasons why the Bitcoin story is being so attractive at the moment, let's be honest, if you look at the ECB, the European Central Bank, if you look at the Fed in the US, printing money like crazy, inflation is going to hit one day or another. I'm not a financial expert in that matter, so I'm not going to express any statements on that. I mean, let me go back to the technology for 1 second here, okay? Many people claim to be experts, as well in the blockchain as in the crypto world, etc. My view is there are no experts. I happen to know maybe a bit more than average, and that's fine, but I don't call myself an expert. Why? Because the technology is too young, the market is too young, that world is too young. There is no history to be able to be an expert in that world. Okay? So there's a lot of growing to do for everyone in that world to become better than average. But to succeed in that world, better than average could be just enough, as long as we keep evolving and keep moving forward. Okay? So technology, a lot of growing still to do, absolutely, but going there fast. I am amazed by young lions, young people, students playing around with this technology and making things happen where I go, wow, this is really powerful stuff. Yeah? The advantage of sometimes being at a few universities is that you meet some clever students and some great ideas for theses and things like that. And there's some interesting stuff going on. Okay, there will be some shocking revelations in the next 10, 15, 20 years to come, which will change the world. Absolutely. Because those people are not poisoned by knowledge from the past. They just happen to be the same age as the technology. So they've never known any difference. I remember when my son, who's now at the second year in university, when he was 6, we were in a rental car and he was in the back. And I asked him like, oh, can you open the window? And it was like one of these things that you still have to turn the handle, you know? We've known that still, right? And my son goes, well, Daddy, that's impossible. I can't find the button. But that is so characteristic for these people because they are not living. That will be the future in this generation that we all need to look at. Okay. Then the financial acts, your second part of the question. The financial acts, I think the power of it is exactly that there is no central governing body. There is that decoupling from inflation. There is a scarcity in supply, which is a total contradiction with the financial world as we see it today. So will this thing keep growing? I sure hope so. And I sure think so. To how much? Hard to say. I hear crazy numbers all over the place. I'm going like, well, the only thing we can do is from a technical analysis perspective, extend the lines from the past and try to create a projection that makes sense. But I'm not going to be able to give any projection based on what? The technology is too young. Okay? So from a purely financial institution, the financial world, I think this offers people that are creative, that look further than the length of their nose, an absolute alternative for a store of value. Absolutely. And I think it happens more and more. If you look at the outflow from exchanges, how much is taken out of exchanges, as well Bitcoin as Ethereum, the quantities are massive. That means they're not being traded. That means they're not being transacted, right? So that is a significant sign to me. People are stacking up, and what happens every time when we reach a new all-time high, the smart guys are taking profits and buying back in lower. And that's normal, that's the evolution of the market. But the overall trend, if you look at it from a macro scale perspective, we had this 2017 high and then massive dump to as low as $3,700, right? And then since then going back up again. And there will be another correction. Probably, maybe, potentially, yes. Guaranteed? No. Will it continue to rise? Probably, yes. Likely, yes. Maybe, no. So it is all out there in the open. I just know for myself that it's an opportunity that I don't want to miss out on. And I think that's an important message. Imagine, and I don't have the numbers here, but do this exercise for anybody who's listening or watching. How much money is there in the world, and how much do you honestly think of that value will flow into cryptocurrencies one day or another in the next 5 to 10 years? Just take the number, take 1%, and that gives you the market cap. Now, the number that we have now of 1.2 trillion is tip of the iceberg. It's tip of the iceberg. If only a few percent of the money in the world flows into cryptocurrencies, the value goes up exponentially. So we are, even though it's already been around for a while, we are still early. Who is looking at it? The smart guys from a financial perspective. Who are that typically? Well, sorry to say, bankers, right? And financial guys and financial gurus combined with the right technology savviness to do it right. So I see a convergence absolutely in that world from smart financial cookies, attracting technical wild young talent to help them create a success to better understand that technology, to better understand that market. I mean, look at the website of MasterCard. How many people that have experience with blockchain and cryptocurrencies are they hiring? The same with Visa, the same with PayPal. I mean, are we blind? Of course these guys are looking into it. They're not stupid. Okay, so from a financial perspective, I absolutely think that this is going to change the financial landscape as we know it in the next decades to come. Will it be short term? Probably not, because it takes time for the incubation process to take place. It takes time to become a common part accepted in the world. It takes time for the regulators to build their legislation. And the advantage of having no legislation is that there's no legislation, right? But it is a showstopper for adoptability. The adoption slows down because of a lack of legislation. The advantage of legislation is that suddenly for everybody it's legal. I sometimes have people telling me, oh, Bitcoin, that's the thing that's used to buy and sell drugs. I'm like, well, you really think so? I think more drugs is being transacted and paid for in cash with dollar bills and euro bills than ever with Bitcoin. Come on, really. So it's the same discussion there. It is just about adoption, about getting used to it. Then the third part in your question was about risk management. I personally believe in a healthy diversification. And anybody who says, I'm all in, you know, the typical reactions and stories, I think that's bullshit. I think that's totally stupid. Okay? If you're smart with the wealth that you have, you spread it across different asset classes and you spread it right across the risk. This market is very young. It is a very high risk market. I mean, for all we know, next year, Satoshi Nakamoto shows up and pulls the plug on Bitcoin because there's some built-in backdoor left or right and the thing is worth zero. Do you want that risk? Can you guarantee that that's not possible? I can't. I cannot guarantee that. Nobody can. Okay? So spreading in a healthy way is healthy. That's why it's called spread. Okay? And I think the financial institutions are doing the same. If I look at a pension fund in Hong Kong, who is now launching a crypto fund. In Europe, in some countries, well, that's not possible because of the legislations, what a pension fund can and cannot do. But in Hong Kong, it's possible. So those guys are launching a crypto pension fund. Imagine people depositing $50 a month into their pension fund and that going into crypto for the long term. Is that guaranteed? No, it's not guaranteed, but it's a healthy spread. Okay, so from a risk perspective, yes, please, by all means, stay with the feet on the ground, stay healthy, okay, and be realistic. I'm always telling people, don't ever do it with money you cannot afford to lose. Imagine that something happens and tomorrow the value that you think you have is zero. What are you going to do? Jump off a building? I hope not, because then you've been stupid. So from a risk perspective, I would rather look at opportunity and use good sanity for the risk than the other way around. Yes, there is risk, and exactly because there's risk, it should be a reason to do it, because that's when it is lucrative to do it.
Fantastic. No, I think it's a very wise words, and I think we need that. So probably, and we passed 1 hour, so I'm cautious of your time. So Bart, so probably in the last, I have two last questions. So the first one is, so we talk about risk management, but let's talk about cybersecurity. I think everyone at a certain point lost some Bitcoin or some crypto, especially if you're in this.
I haven't.
Yeah, you haven't? Wow, I lost 1 Bitcoin. But it actually was a mistake of the platform. But now it's money. At the time was a bit less, but it's still not good. But I know a lot of people that are worse than me. But the point right now is just for me to understand is, so from a cybersecurity, like you mentioned, there's the conventional cybersecurity. But at the moment, we have a complexity, and my questions are a bit complex, but I think when you talk about technology, it cannot be kind of simplest. So I want to touch, because we have right now centralized systems operating with decentralized systems. Yesterday, I was coordinating a conference, and one of the speakers said something amazing, is that at the moment, for instance, if you look at DeFi, DeFi is the biggest historic decentralized financial collaboration ever in history of mankind. You had the villages and everything else. Now we have this, and of course this is creating a lot of parallel conventions in terms of the way we deal with money. But like you mentioned, with the cryptocurrencies, which we have around more than 10,000 or more, at least with some kind of impact. And actually 70% of the tokens, yeah. Well, it depends on how you define. Yeah, it's a big discussion. But if you look at, well, let's say tokens, there's around, let's say 10 to 20,000, but 70% of them are ECR tokens. So they are all dependent of Ethereum in one way. So if something happens to Ethereum ECR token, we might have another problem. But at the same point is that we have right now a world that is becoming crypto friendly, digital assets. The central banks are moving in that direction. And then we still have the paper world, which is still massive, and the paper economy, which is the certificates, the property registration, all these different things. So all of this is right now converging to become everything digital. It's just a question of time and the question of resources. So my question for you is, with your wisdom and expertise, and as well decades of experience moving with high-profile technology, big corporations, and as well in the cutting edge of innovation, how do you see this from a cybersecurity perspective and from a technology infrastructure? Because most of the legacy systems we have right now are not prepared for this. And for instance, let's say a bank that has, just an example, you are in Belgium, and for instance, let's say any security token or any token like Aave that is right now worth $5 billion. So at the end of the day, this is real money. And most of these organizations are bigger than most of the banks. Let's be honest, if we compare banks that have been going for 100 years and some of these tokens that are worth, even me, I created a token that reached $200 million in the space of 6 months. And I'm involved with others that will be faster. So I think the challenge is, can we make the diligence on the cybersecurity, but as well on the technology, and as well in explaining to organizations, because you touched that in the beginning of your experience. The challenge is not just technology, is making sure that people, technology, cybersecurity, and regulators all work together in one way or the other, because if they don't work together, it will be a bit of a chaos in the cyberpunk world, which we partly go into that direction. But I want to hear your thoughts on that, because that's for me the biggest challenge, and it's a systematic and systemic risk, because in the end of the day, this can create we are already creating like a paradox world that people have billions of dollars that don't pay any taxes, can pass the money very easily from one country to the other. And if they are very intelligent, the regulators don't even find it, if they are discreet. And as well, if you look, well, let's be honest, if there's 3,000 wallets that are managing $1.3 trillion, this is 3,000 people that are managing, or organizations that are managing $1.3 trillion. This never happened in history. Well, it happened in history. There was all kings and emperors that had access to all the money. But the point is the velocity. Even an emperor had to have multiple generations of kings and people behind him, and there would be an infrastructure behind it. Whenever he was an autocrat or less autocrat, there was always an institution. There was the government. Here now, it can be a person somewhere in Bahamas that can create this if he knows how to do it. Of course, I'm not defending the craziness about this, because of course, Bitcoin and I would say crypto is even more diligent because everything is in smart contracts. So the regulators can actually find the smart contracts and find all of this, but most of them don't have the intelligence for this. So that's my bit notes. I know that is a big complex question, but I want to hear your thoughts more in an open way.
Well, the only reasonable way to explain this, if you want to keep a burglar out of your house, then you try to make it to them as difficult as possible to get into your house, right? But the first question to ask yourself is, why would a burglar want to be in my house and not in the neighbor's house? Because you would rather see the burglar go to your neighbor's house and not to yours, right? So I've never seen people that really have a lot of these cryptocurrencies brag about it. Nope, they're very discreet about it. Absolutely. Okay. Usually they're in some vault in a bank or with a custodian like Bitco or Zappo or any of the others. So they don't have the risk of security. So the best way to deal with the risk, especially in this place where I guarantee you there are hundreds of people that are smarter and know a lot more than you and me together, right? So why would we try to outsmart them and try to protect ourselves? I think the true wealth relies on parties that are specialized in that and deal with the security for them. Trying to deal with it yourself is like trying to put shades on your window while leaving your back door open without knowing about it. Okay? So from a cybersecurity perspective, yes, of course, it is always an area that people are concerned about, that people look at, that people could panic when something happens. And I mean, the other week I had a guy who had a ledger with some Bitcoins on it. So I asked him the question like, okay, so where are the 24 seed words? And he goes like, oh, wait, I wrote those down somewhere, but I don't remember where. Oh, there's your security breach already, right? So people need to be aware that security is something that they need to think about, absolutely. And as the value in that space becomes a risk and you might become a potential target, then you need to protect yourself. And the best way to protect yourself is by not protecting yourself and letting somebody who specializes in that do it for you. Okay? We're not going to tell people what to do from a security perspective. That would be crazy. That would be stupid. Because then when they make a mistake and something happens, who do you think they're going to blame? I don't want to be blamed. My key message is make sure if they're not your keys, they're not your coins. If you have them somewhere, make sure that they are safe. Make sure that they can be recovered in case something happens to you. So do you have an envelope with your passwords and your seed words of your ledger or your Trezor or whichever account you use with a notary as part of your will or not? Those are rather the type of things to think about. I'm not worried at all for somebody breaking into my house because there's nothing to find here. Okay? Nothing, period. I can leave the door wide open. The only thing I have here is a few computers and that's about it. Okay? So why would you make yourself a target? If you have something that is of value, then put it in a safe place. If you would happen to have a very expensive painting, then you're going to put the right security around that painting, make sure it doesn't get stolen, or the painting goes to a museum that guards it and that insures it for you, right? And you let them take care of it. Or it goes into a bank vault and you let the bank take care of it. But you're not going to keep that on your front door pouch, okay? So the same goes with crypto. I see people that really have a lot of crypto being very discreet about it. And I think that's already the most important, to make sure you don't become a target. Because once you become a target, let's be honest, you can protect your house in every possible way you want. If a burglar really wants in, they will get in. So make sure you don't become a target. That's the best security you can have.
Yeah, that's a very wise words and common sense, but sometimes people forget that.
I mean, people look at like a treasure and a ledger and then an engrave and then all these type of things. And I go, yeah, fantastic, better than nothing. So where do you keep the ledger and where do you keep the paper with the seed words? Oh, the ledger is in my drawer and the seed words are in the other drawer on my desk. Yeah, right. That is not security, yeah? Let's be honest. Okay? So, mate, don't become a target.
So well, last thing, and I think to wrap up, and thank you so much for this wisdom and a lot of these things, is where can people find you, Bart? You are, of course, with your website, but I think it's always coming from you, and we'll put all the links in this interview and the YouTube and all the different places where it's distributed.
People can find me through my cell phone, through email. I happen to be one of these people that doesn't read my mails every day. So if somebody sends me a mail, then don't panic that I don't respond within a week, because I have things to do. I don't get distracted by my mails or other technology for that matter, okay? But if people really need to get hold of me, they typically use my phone number and just call me. Chances are big that I'm not picking up, and then they just try again. I don't listen to my voicemails either, as an example, okay? If people leave me a voicemail, I don't listen to them. I just ignore them. If it's important and they need me, they will call me back.
You know, very wise as well. Thank you so much, Bart. It's been a fantastic overview of your career, but as well what you're doing with ICT2. And I think as well the work that is important. IT2Profit, let me spell it correctly. So we have, people can find it in IT2Profit, that is your .com, your major platform. And I think there's a lot of wisdom here about how to look at technology, setups of infrastructure, Bitcoin, crypto, tokenization, OCT, and cybersecurity. Thank you so much, Bart. It's been a pleasure. And I learned a lot of things as well during this, which is very important as well, especially the wisdom of the experience and as well the details that are important on this.
Thank you, Dinis. It's been a pleasure being here.